All right, so buckle up, everyone, because today we're diving deep into a topic that's shrouded in mystery and speculation: the death of Adolf Hitler.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, we're going to be sifting through historical analysis, news articles, oh, and even some choice bits from Wikipedia to try and separate the fact from the fiction.
Well, that sounds like a challenge. I'm in.
Good, because by the end of this deep dive, you'll have all the knowledge you need to debunk those persistent Hitler survival rumors that just never seem to die.
I'm always up for a good myth-busting session.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how this event still sparks so much debate even after all these years.
It really is. It really makes you think about the power of myth-making in history, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's start by laying down some groundwork. The official story, the one most historians agree on, is that Hitler committed suicide with Eva Braun in that Berlin bunker back in April of '45.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. With Soviet forces closing in, Hitler, he chose to end his own life rather than face capture.
And what about the bodies?
Well, their bodies were reportedly burned in the Chancellery Garden.
I see. So there were witnesses to this.
Yeah, there are eyewitness accounts from those who were inside the bunker, although the details do vary a bit from person to person.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which is understandable given the chaotic circumstances, I guess. You know, different people experiencing such a traumatic event would likely have different perceptions of what happened.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, we're not just going on a word of mouth here, are we? There must be some physical evidence to back this up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also forensic evidence. Like, for example, they recovered some dental remains and analyzed them, and those remains actually matched Hitler's dental records.
Dental records. Huh. Well, you can't really argue with that.
No, it's a pretty solid piece of the puzzle, I'd say.
So the evidence points to a suicide, but there are still some questions about the whole thing, right?
Yeah, even with all the research that's been done, the specifics surrounding the disposal of the bodies are still a little bit unclear.
And I bet that lack of clarity is exactly what gives those conspiracy theories space to flourish. I mean, let's be honest. Stalin's government didn't really help matters, did they?
No, not at
Yeah.
all. I mean, right from the start, you have forces intentionally trying to muddy the waters. Stalin spread disinformation. You know, he actually claimed that Hitler might have survived.
Wait, why would Stalin do that? What would be the point?
Well, there are a couple of theories about that. Some historians think he wanted to sow discord among the Western powers. You know, maybe plant the idea that they might be harboring Hitler.
Oh, so like playing mind games with the West.
Yeah, exactly. But there's another theory, too. Some people think it was more about covering up a botched investigation on the Soviets' part.
Like they couldn't definitively prove Hitler was dead and they didn't want to admit it.
Yeah, I mean, imagine the embarrassment if they couldn't, conclusively say, we got him.
That makes sense. So either trying to mess with the West or saving face. Either way, pretty strategic.
And this disinformation campaign, I mean, it wasn't just some, small-scale whisper campaign, was it? This had real reach, right?
Oh, it was huge. Think about this. Years after the war was over, a significant chunk of Americans, like a lot of people, still believed that Hitler could be alive. That's how effective Stalin's disinformation was.
Wow, that's incredible. And I mean, Stalin wasn't the only one spinning tales, was he? Didn't certain publications and tabloids kind of jump on the conspiracy bandwagon?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You had publications like the National Police Gazette in the U.S. They were notorious for pushing these narratives.
And what kind of stuff would they print?
Oh, all sorts of things. Stories about Hitler sightings, elaborate escape routes, the whole 9 yards. They really played up the sensationalism. I mean, sensationalism sells, right?
It always does.
So they basically capitalize on the public's curiosity, fueling those conspiracy theories even more. Yeah, it ties into something I find really fascinating, how easily those seeds of doubt, once they're planted, can take root and grow into something much bigger. But let's get into the specifics. What are some of the most common Hitler survival myths out there?
Oh, there are tons. But I think one that always pops up is the whole escape to Argentina theory. The idea that Hitler somehow managed to escape to South America.
Right, the image of Hitler, like, chilling on a beach somewhere. I've definitely heard that one.
Yeah, and it gained a lot of traction when 2 German U-boats, U-530 and U-977, arrived in Argentina just a short time after the war.
So there were German U-boats in Argentina. Is that what sparked the rumors?
Yeah, it fueled speculation that they might have been carrying high-ranking Nazis,
Yeah.
Maybe even Hitler himself.
Did they?
Well, investigations at the time couldn't really confirm anything, yet Argentinian, U.S., and U.K. authorities all looking into it, but they couldn't find any hard proof to support the whole escaped Nazi theory.
So is that the end of it? Case closed?
Well, not for everyone. This whole theory was revived again in 2011 with a book called Grey Wolf, The Escape of Adolf Hitler.
I think I remember hearing about that. What did it say?
The author claims that Hitler actually lived in Argentina until 1962 and even fathered children there.
Wow, that's a bold claim. Did historians take it seriously?
Not really. Most historians dismissed the book pretty quickly. They said it relied too heavily on sources that weren't really credible, and there just wasn't any solid evidence to back it up.
Okay, so probably not the most reliable source. Speaking of questionable sources, didn't the History Channel have a show a while back called, like, Hunting Hitler or something?
Oh yeah, they did. It's interesting how these theories, even without solid evidence, can still find their way into the mainstream.
So what was their angle?
They explored possible escape routes, supposed sightings, but again, nothing concrete ever really came out of it.
It seems like there's always someone willing to entertain these ideas, no matter how outlandish they might be. Okay, let's move on to another popular one. The Antarctic base theory. This one has always kind of captured my imagination.
Oh yeah, it's a classic. It's got that whole secret underground lair vibe. The theory actually stems from a real Nazi expedition to Antarctica back in the late 1930s.
So the Nazis were in Antarctica?
They were. They explored and charted a part of the continent. But, this fairly normal expedition was all it took to spark the imaginations of conspiracy theorists.
Let me guess. They envisioned some kind of secret Nazi base hidden beneath the ice.
Exactly. And not just any base. Oh no, this is supposed to be a technologically advanced haven where the Nazis could rebuild and plot their return.
So did they find anything?
Well, there's absolutely no evidence to support any significant German activity in Antarctica during the war, let alone the construction of a massive hidden base.
Oh wait, I thought there was this whole thing about a U.S. Navy expedition, Operation High Jump, being sent to attack the supposed base.
Ah, right, another layer to the conspiracy. Operation High Jump was a real expedition that happened in 1946-47. But its real purpose was a lot less exciting. It was mainly about scientific research and, some cold weather training for their personnel.
Oh, so they basically took a normal military operation and spun it into something sinister?
Exactly. Those claims that the expedition ran into Nazi superweapons or even flying saucers are complete fabrications.
So no epic battles in the Antarctic? That's a bummer. What about those stories about nuclear explosions in the South Atlantic in the 1950s? Weren't those supposed to be attempts to destroy the Antarctic base?
Another dramatic detail that just doesn't hold up. Those explosions did happen, but they were high-altitude tests, far from Antarctica, and totally unrelated to any alleged Nazi base.
Okay, so we've tackled escape to Argentina and the Antarctic base, but there must be others, right? Like even crazier ones.
Oh, there are plenty. For example, there's one that claims Hitler was hiding out in Kentucky.
Kentucky, really?
Yep. It came from a con man who was later arrested for mail fraud, unsurprisingly.
It seems like the wilder the theory, the more some people want to believe it.
Okay, before we move on, I want to touch on one more theory, the double theory. You know, the one where they cremated a Hitler lookalike and he actually got away.
Ah, yes, that one. It gained some traction when they discovered a skull fragment that everyone thought was Hitler's. But then DNA testing revealed it actually belonged to a woman.
So a case of mistaken identity turned into a whole conspiracy theory.
Pretty much. The double theory, along with many other early myths, were actually investigated by H.R. Trevor Roper, a historian who was tasked by British intelligence with figuring out the truth about Hitler's death.
Didn't he write that book, The Last Days of Hitler?
He did, and it was one of the first authoritative accounts to really debunk those early myths. His work is still highly regarded today. It's considered a pretty solid foundation for understanding what happened in those final days.
Interesting. So we've got a lot to think about here. We've got the official story, which has some evidence to back it up, but we also have these lingering questions and these wild theories that just won't go away. Yeah, and it makes you wonder, what is it about this event that keeps people speculating even after all these years?
That's a great question. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. We're going to dive into the psychology behind these conspiracy theories, why they persist, and what they tell us about how we grapple with history and truth.
This is where it gets really interesting. Get ready to go deep. It's funny, isn't it? Even as the historian like Trevor Roper, with all that research, he admitted that sometimes people just prefer a good story, even if it means ignoring the facts.
And that kind of leads into something we touched on earlier, the psychology, behind these Hitler survival theories that just keep popping up. Why are they so appealing to people, even when there's evidence that contradicts them?
I think it often comes down to this human need we have, this need for things to make sense. In a world that often feels chaotic and random, these theories, they provide a sense of order. A way to make sense of an event that feels too chaotic, too unresolved.
So it's not just about like distrusting the government or official narratives, but it's more about a deeper need to find meaning in these events.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, imagine accepting the official account. For some people, it might feel like admitting defeat, like saying that this monstrous figure Hitler could just slip away like that. But the idea that he might have escaped, even though it's terrifying, it provides a kind of twisted closure.
So it's almost like they're trying to deny Hitler any final victory, even in death.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of that. Like they're refusing to accept a simple ending for such a complex and evil figure.
And the fact that there's no like definitive visual confirmation of his death, because the bodies were burned, I bet that just adds fuel to the conspiracy fire.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when there's no smoking gun image, it leaves a void that conspiracy theories rush to fill. It's much easier to come up with these elaborate stories when you don't have a clear and undeniable picture to contradict them.
It's like that missing piece of the puzzle just becomes like a breeding ground for all sorts of wild interpretations.
Exactly. And don't forget the role that popular culture plays in all this.
Yeah.
You see movies, books, even video games that play with these alternative histories, and it blurs the lines between fact and fiction, and it feeds into people's fascination with these what-if scenarios.
Right, so it's almost like a feedback loop. The more these theories show up in pop culture, the more like normal they seem, and the easier it is for people to buy into them, even if there's no real basis for them.
Right, and it highlights how important it is to be a critical consumer of information, especially these days. I mean, we're bombarded with information from all sides.
It's so easy to just get swept up in a good story.
It is, but we have to be careful, not to let that overshadow our judgment, especially when we're dealing with historical events as sensitive as the death of Hitler.
So it sounds like it all boils down to being able to separate speculation from actual facts.
I think that's a big part of it.
Okay, so we've talked about the psychology behind these theories, the role of popular culture, and the importance of critical thinking. But I want to shift gears a bit now. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, that Hitler did somehow escape. What would that mean for how we understand history and even justice?
Ooh, that's a big question. I think if someone like Hitler could actually evade capture, it would really complicate our understanding of accountability.
Yeah.
Especially on a global scale.
It's almost like it would be a betrayal to all the people who suffered under his regime. The idea that he could have lived out his days in peace, escaping the consequences of his actions. It's hard to accept.
It really challenges our faith in the idea of justice, doesn't it? Especially when we're talking about individuals who had so much power.
It makes you wonder, could something like that happen again?
It's a sobering thought. It really emphasizes how crucial it is to understand history, not just as a bunch of facts, but as this complex web of events and motivations and consequences.
So history isn't just about, memorizing dates and names. It's about understanding the forces that shape those events, the individuals who drive them.
Exactly. And that's why, even though it's uncomfortable and it's dark, it's so important to keep studying figures like Hitler to try to understand what motivated them and learn from those mistakes of the past.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the psychology of conspiracy theories, the role of popular culture, and even the idea of Hitler escaping justice.
It's been a pretty intense discussion.
But before we wrap up, there's one more thing I want to explore. It's something that's always kind of fascinated me about the whole Hitler story.
I'm all ears. What is it?
Yeah. It's this whole fascination with Hitler as a person. I mean, even all these years later, he still has this hold on our collective imagination. Why is that? Like, what is it about him that keeps people so captivated?
It's a question that stumped a lot of people.
Yeah.
Historians, psychologists, I mean, everyone. I think there are a few things going on. On the one hand, Hitler, he represents like this really dark chapter in human history.
Right.
His actions were so horrific. I mean, so unbelievable. they still shock us even today.
It's like we're drawn to this abyss, trying to figure out how such evil could even exist.
Exactly. There's this morbid curiosity about him, this need to understand something that's almost impossible to understand. But there's also another thing, I think. Hitler's ability to manipulate people, to control them. He was a master at propaganda, a charismatic leader who convinced millions of people to follow him.
So it's not just about like the horror of what he did, but also how effective he was at getting what he wanted.
Yeah, exactly. There's this fascination with that kind of power. The ability to influence people, to control them on such a huge scale. It's terrifying, but it's also kind of mesmerizing.
It's like we're trying to study him, to learn how someone could get that much power and use it in such a destructive way.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some of that. Like if we can understand how he did it, maybe we can prevent something like that from happening again.
It reminds us that history isn't just about remembering dates and events. It's about understanding the things that cause those events, the people who make them happen.
Exactly, and that's why, even though it's tough, it's important to keep studying figures like Hitler, to analyze them, to figure out their motivations and learn from the things that went wrong.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Hitler's death and all these conspiracy theories that just won't go away, I think it's safe to say that we've uncovered more than just historical facts.
Yeah.
We've talked about human nature, the appeal of mystery and how myths are created and why they stick around.
It's been a journey, that's for sure.
And I hope everyone listening, I hope they're walking away with a better understanding of how complex history really is, and how important it is to think critically about everything, to not just accept things at face value.
I couldn't agree more. The things we've talked about, they're still relevant today, even after all these years.
And on that note, I think we'll wrap up this episode. So until next time, everyone, keep asking questions, keep digging for the truth, and keep diving deep.